a couple of people or so to make very brief speeches as we conclude. First of all, I would like to acknowledge our bishops who have been present for this celebration today, beginning with His Excellency the Nuncio, who began the celebration for us, Archbishop Bert van Meegen. Let us give him a clap. Next, I acknowledge the presence of His Eminence, the Cardinal John Njue. Next, I acknowledge the presence of our host, Archbishop Philip Anyolo. And then I acknowledge the presence of Most Reverend Martin Kivuva, Archbishop of Mombasa and Chairman of the conference. Next, I acknowledge the presence of Most Reverend Anthony Muheria, Archbishop of Nyeri. I wish to acknowledge the presence of Archbishop Peter Cairo, Archbishop Emeritus of Nyeri. I also acknowledge the presence of Bishop Joseph Mairura of Kisii. I acknowledge the presence of Bishop Norman Kingo of Machakos. I acknowledge the presence of Bishop Alfred Rotich of Kericho. Next is Bishop Henry Juma of Kitale. Next is Bishop Hieronymus Joya of Maralal. Next is Bishop George Muthaka of Garissa. Next is Bishop Paul Kariuki of Wote. Next is Bishop Anthony Mukoboireri of Isiolo. Next is Bishop Dominic Mengich of Eldoret. Next is Bishop Emeritus of Kakamega, Philip Solometi. Next is Bishop John Obala of Ngong. Next is Bishop Peter Kiara of Marsabit. Next is Bishop Willibald Lago of Malindi. Next is Bishop John Binda of Lodwar. Next is Bishop Mark Kadima of Bungoma. Next is Bishop Maria Wainaina of Muranga. Next is Bishop Michael Odiwa of Homa Bay. Next is Bishop Joseph Mongela of Kitui. Next is Bishop Cleophas Oseso of Nakuru. Next is Bishop Joseph Mbatia of Nyaururu. Next is Bishop David Kamau, Auxiliary of Nairobi. Next is retired Bishop Rodrigo Mejia, formerly from Ethiopia. Next, I introduce to you Monsignor John Njue Njeru, Apostolic Administrator of the Military Ordinariate. Next, I want to introduce to you the Secretary to the Nunciature, Monsignor Luciano Labanga. I want to introduce to you the Secretary General of AMESEA, Father Anthony Makunde. And I introduce to you the Vice Chancellor of the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, Father Stephen Mbugua. Before we go to a few speeches, I also want to acknowledge the presence of the following. I would like to acknowledge and appreciate the presence of our former President, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. Thank you very much. I acknowledge and appreciate the presence of the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Wetangula. I appreciate and acknowledge the presence of our Chief Justice, Lady Martha Koome. I appreciate the presence of the former First Lady, Mama Ngina Kenyattas, together with your family. I appreciate and acknowledge the presence of our hosting governor, Governor Johnson Sakaja of Nairobi. I acknowledge the presence of the following cabinet secretaries: Honorable Moses Kuria and Honorable Susan Nahumicha. I also acknowledge the presence of the Secretary of the Cabinet, Madam Mercy Wanjau. Thank you very much. I acknowledge the presence of the former CS and National Security Advisor to the President, Ambassador Monica Juma. Thank you very much. I acknowledge the presence of the Principal Secretary for Correctional Services, Dr. Sally Beako. Thank you very much. I acknowledge the presence of the following members of Parliament: Honorable Edwin Sifuna, Senator for Nairobi; Honorable Timothy Wanyonyi, our area MP; Honorable George Kagombe, MP for Gatundu South; Honorable Beatrice Elachi, MP for Dagoretti North. I also acknowledge the presence of the various religious leaders who have joined us today, particularly Bishop Paul Njenga, AIPCK Kenya; Bishop Josephat Kamanya, AIPCA as well; and the General Secretary of NCCK, Reverend Canon Chris Kinyanjui. Thank you very much for your presence. And I also acknowledge the presence of all members of the county assemblies, especially of Nairobi and Kiambu. Allow me now very briefly to invite a couple of people or more, just very few of them. I'll be inviting a few people to make very brief comments in the interest of time. Before that, as we move from here, we move to Eldoret, the Bishop Auxiliary Elect of Eldoret, who has come for rehearsal. He came to see what is done when the time comes. Wanasema ukiona cha mwenzako kinanyolewa, amekuja kutia chake maji. Reverend Monsignor John Kiplimo Lele. The next celebration is his in Eldoret. Thank you very much for joining us. For Jude. Allow me now to invite the Governor of Nairobi, His Excellency Honorable Johnson Sakaja, to make brief comments and greet the congregation. Please come over here. Let us give him a clap as he comes.